How's it going, everyone? Mike here on the Tressa Collectibles channel. Today we have some really cool stuff for you guys. Both me and Randall are going to be showing you guys how to deck build featuring cards from the RWBY set. So this is a 2-video day. Myself and Randall, I'm going to be building a deck, he's going to be building his deck, and then you guys are going to see us duke it out in a future gameplay video. But for this video, our focus is on how we approach deck building. Randall's going to be focusing on the 8-gate villain deck, and then I am going to be trying my hand at building the 8 standby deck. So let's get right into it. So I've read the entire RWBY set once or twice over. So I'm not completely familiar with it, so you guys will get to hear my thoughts on deck building the set, and then we will work on it and then go from there. You know, deck building is kind of always a work, you know? Don't expect to get things perfect on your first try. Part of the fun of Weiss Schwarz is experimenting and trying out your builds and then adjusting based on your results and your gameplay experience. So when we're building any deck in Weiss, we want to first start off with our climaxes. Most of the time, also the corresponding climax combos. So since we're trying to build an 8 standby deck, we are first of all going to go ahead and add our standby climaxes. So this one is for the RWBY level 3, and then we also have the other set of standby for the Pyrrha level 3. I'm also going to go ahead and throw in the 4 copies of the RWBY level 3 that goes with the climax. That is going to be our level 3 finisher. And then I'm also going to throw in 4 copies of the Pyrrha. Not necessarily going to run 4, or I might or might not run 4, but I'm just going to throw 4 in for the time being, and then we can always, adjust the number as we see fit. So here we have our beginning of the 8 standby deck. We have our climaxes as well as their climax combos, and then next we want to think about how the deck is going to play out. When I play standby, I usually think about what I'm going to be standbying out at every level. So we want to make sure we have good things to standby out at level 0, and at level 1, and at level 2. Remember that standby lets you summon a character from waiting room whose level is X plus 1 or lower your current level. So if I'm level 0, I can standby out some level 1 characters. So the first thing that comes to mind is I want to standby out this 1/1 Hand Encore RWBY. So this card gets 2000 power if I have 2 more other remnant, and then it has Hand Encore. I can discard a character. Pretty common type of standby profile that you want to standby out. Generally speaking, you want to get out high-powered and really sticky, hard to deal with characters, like the ones that have Hand Encore, so that even if they do get reversed, you can discard your weaker powered characters in your hand, and then they can keep attacking. And chances are your opponent, if they're not playing another standby, they're going to be hard-pressed to consistently deal with your board. Standby deck's goals are usually to try to win board and gain resources through just not losing characters repeatedly, and then making your opponent's life pretty rough if they try to rely on reverse. So let's look for our level 2 standby. I believe there is a level 2 Yang. I believe it's this one. If I have 2 or more other remnant, she gets 3k, and then she also has discard a remnant encore. So 10k Hand Encore. Pretty run-of-the-mill, but a big, sticky 2-so beater is exactly what we want. And then at level 3, what are we standbying out? So we already do have the level 3 Pyrrha and the level 3 RWBY. These, especially the level 3 Pyrrha with her climax combo, she's really meant to be standbyed out, especially with her climax combo where I can shuffle cards back, and she gets to attack immediately the turn she's standbyed out. And then I'm also really happy if I get to standby out RWBY, because that's just 2 less stock that I have to spend to actually hard play her, which means I can potentially save my stock for other things. So I think my primary standby targets are those two, and then I think I also want to add in, I believe there's a level 3 Weiss assist. Yeah, this one. 2k to front for my remnant characters on play heal, and then I can rest it to top check 2 and rearrange them. I'm just going to throw in 2 of them. Because most of the time, I think I'm going to be standbying out either Pura or Ruby instead. But, you know, a 2k assist, especially early level 2, can also be pretty good. If I manage to get both the Weiss and the Pura out at the same time, my board is going to be really, really hard for them to deal with. There is also consideration for the level 2 Jean, which gives the Pura a hand encore. So we're gonna throw that in as well, just and then we can see if we want to keep it or not later. I believe it's this one. Level 6 500, and then all of my other Puras get hand encore and 500 power. So let's throw 2 of those in for now. We're probably not going to end up be playing both of these, but we just want to keep it in our head. Next up, let's think about our level 0 line. So we want to, I think, play something that can mill our deck. So we have more waiting room, so we have more chances to get the standby cards we want into our waiting room. And we're also looking for something that can ideally live more than one turn or make it difficult for our opponent to deal with. So the Ruby Runner actually, I think fulfills both of those criteria. The Ruby Runner from the Trial deck, this card, it's a 2k runner, mill runner. If I mill Remnant, she gets to move to another open position at the start of my opponent's attack phase. And then on play, she mills 2, and then per every Remnant character milled, she gets 1000. So actually, this is a really good profile, because if I manage to mill 2 Remnant characters, I get to be 4k, which is really nice considering there's a lot of 3500 power characters right now. Plus, she's a runner, so there's a good chance that she gets to live multiple turns. So she mills, and she lives, potentially, if I open her on turn 1. So perfect card for what we're looking for. I'm just going to add 4 of those. Those are going in my deck straight away. There's also consideration for this other Ruby, where I can, at the start of my opponent's attack phase, I can pay 1, and she moves to an open position on my back row. So she runs to the back row, and then she also has startup, pay 1, sack this card, top check 4, add a Remnant. I think I'm going to throw in 2 of those for the time being, and then we'll see from there. Being a standby deck, I also want ways to be able to discard my standby targets from my hand. So a good way to do that, I think there is a perfect card for what we're looking for. It's a blue card, and it's this card, James Ironwood. He has 2 effects. On play, discard a Remnant character to draw 1, and then also on play, I can discard a card, reveal the top card of my deck, and then salvage a character from my waiting room whose E level is X or lower than the revealed card on the top of the deck. So this is a really, really powerful effect in standby for multiple reasons. One, he lets me draw, so I can either draw into standby, or I have 1 card dig towards triggering standby. Remember, guys, that when you guys play standby, the goal is to try to get as many beefy bodies on the board as soon as possible, so you can start winning the board and start winning the game that way. And James fulfills that role twofold. I get to go 1 card deeper towards either drawing or triggering standby, and then also I get to discard any standby targets in my hand, push them to the waiting room so that I can standby them out from the waiting room. So I'm just going to go ahead and add 4 of that. I want to see this card multiple times a game, and oftentimes, especially since we're not going to be playing too much blue, and I do think I want to play a couple of blue cards. So James can also act as some good color fixing there. While we're on blue, I think I'm going to throw in a couple copies of this level 3 Blake. She's an early play healer if I have 2 or less climaxes. I don't have too many ways to heal until I get to level 3 without the Blake, I believe. The level 3 Ruby heals, and then the level 3 Weiss support also heals, but then those are all on play effects at level 3. So I think just throwing in... I'll start with 3 copies. And let's just put 4 copies and we'll go from there. Chances are I'm not going to play 4, but we'll just throw in 4 for now. And we'll take a look at our deck so far. So we have 42 cards out of 50 cards. We have... Let's see... We have 10 zeros so far. We have 4 of this hand encore. We have our level 2 standby targets, our level 2 assist for the level 3 Pyrrha. What am I missing here? Thoughts that come to mind. Let's consider our more of our level 0. Brainstorms. Pretty much run in almost every deck. There are some decks out there that don't run Brainstorms, so those are pretty specialized, and I would not advocate for cutting Brainstorms, especially when we're trying to build our first rough drafts of decks. The only notable Brainstorm that comes to mind is the Nora Double Rare. So we're just going to go ahead and add 4 of those. Tap Self-Salvage Brainstorm, pretty par for course. But her second effect is also actually pretty useful because we are playing standby and our characters can usually reverse their characters. This effect should go off fairly often, and maybe it can help us score some crucial reverses and get out of our opponent's counter range sometimes. Let's take a look. Other cards I want to consider. A card that really popped out to me is... Oh, obviously, we can't forget the level 0 Pyrrha. She is the condition for the level 3 Ruby to go off. Ruby does need 2 of the Pyrrha or more in memory for her to activate her Burn and Clock Shoot effect. So I really should have thought about this card sooner, sorry about that, but this card is, I think it's a mandatory 4-of if we are considering the Ruby combo. She also just is a really good card in general. It's on reverse Rhodesia, top check 3, add any remnant, and then discard a card, and then on reverse she goes to memory if I have 2 or less cards. So we are at 50 cards right now. I wonder if... Let me check if we can add more cards and go over the limit. Just to see. We can. Okay, so this is great, because oftentimes when I deck build, I do just add in more cards, just throw in more cards, and then we'll just trim it down. So I think that the level 0 Adam, or the level 1 Adam, is really worth considering. I really want to try this card out. His effect is on attack, I can put one of my other remnant characters from stage into waiting room, so I sack one of my other characters, and if I do top check and then it's a remnant character, I can add it to my hand. So this effect is actually really powerful because oftentimes we are going to be playing over our characters in standby anyways, so it won't be that big of a deal if I preemptively sacrifice a character, and then if I later trigger standby, they're going to be just standby over that empty slot where the character was. Using Adam's effect also helps us dig towards triggering standby. For example, when I activate Adam's effect, if I top check and it's a remnant, I add it to hand, and that would have been my next trigger, which helps me, go more towards any triggers in my deck for triggering standby. And if I reveal a standby, then that's no problem, right? Because the cost of Adam sacrificing a character, that character would have died if I trigger standby anyways. So I'm going to add 4 of that card. Cool thing to note is you can also attack with a hand encore first, and then attack with Adam next, targeting the hand encore, and then you can just discard a card to hand encore it back. So that's kind of like a filter, but again, it helps us dig towards more standby. So I think this card has particular use when we're considering standby builds. Okay, let's look at our level 0. So we have 4 Pyrrha, 4 Nora, 4 runners, 2 back row runners, 4 James. So that's a total of 4, 8, 12, 16, 18. I think we can cut down the brainstorm, definitely. I do think there is also a spammable brainstorm in the set. Let me try to recall what that card is. Or actually... Brainstorm. Cool. So, I think this is the brainstorm I'm thinking about. This uniform Blake brainstorm, where I can give one of my characters 1k at the beginning of my climax. And also it has a spam brainstorm, pay 1 mil 4 per every hit. I get to search and discard a remnant character. So this helps me dig out potential climaxes. One of the issues with standby oftentimes is that I don't really have control over my stock outage. If all of my characters live and I don't really have board space, I don't really have that much room to pay out. Maybe like if I trigger first card standby, it'll be hard to pay out. So using this spammable brainstorm can come up pretty nicely and help me pay out some climaxes, as well as throwing more things into the waiting room. If I hit the brainstorm, I can also search and discard whatever standby targets I want. So all in all, a pretty useful effect to have in standby. So I took out 2 of the tap brainstorm and then added 2 of the spammable brainstorm. I want this at 4. I want the runner at 4. I want James at 4, and I think I want to try the this Ruby back row runner at 2 still. And I think that's probably okay for our level 0 line. We will go through the rest of the level 0s and see if there's anything we want to run later. But for the time being, let's double check, think about some other useful effects that we might want to run. So let's talk counters. So this set has a refresh counter, I believe, and there is also a, what we call in the community, a money counter. A money counter being kind of like an anti-damage counter. I know for a fact that I want the refresh counter for sure. Let me just try to remember what card that is. Let's just type in counter. Cool. So we have the level 2 Crow, which is on use of the backup. I can pay 2 and refresh my deck. So this is what we call a refresh counter. I'm going to include 2 of those. Helps us pay out climaxes and refresh our deck when we are in a tough spot, or if we, unfortunately trigger 2 or 3 climaxes in a row. This can be our get out of jail card. I'm also going to want to include 3 copies of the 2/3 anti-damage event. This event only activates if I have 5 or more characters on my board, but since we're playing standby, this should be hopefully fairly easy to achieve. I don't think I want to play any level 1 counters. 1, because I don't really have the room, I think. And 2, it's not that big of a deal if they get over my 1175. Since they do have hand encore, I can just encore over them and then beat over them on my turn. Let's take a look here. Alright, so here we definitely have to start cutting some cards. We are well over the 50 card limit. So first things first, I think I want to play either the James or the Weiss, and I'm thinking that I prefer James. James being that I can actually, well, we don't have yellow yet, so if we want to hard play him, we would have to play some yellow. But I also think that I would rather have the Pyrrha have hand encore. If we are going heavy on the Pyrrha, I want her to have hand encore. So I'm going to stick with that and cut the Weiss. I'm also going to go down, let's try 3 healers. Try that. We do have the level 0 James and the level 0 uniform Blake for our blue splash, so we can play her. This is going to be all our blue up here, so it's a bit tight. But since we only need a blue at level 2 and we are only currently running one other color, red, prioritizing blue at level 2 should be no problem. Let's see. I think I just want to cut down the James to 1 copy. I'm not going to need it in every matchup, and I don't necessarily think that deck is going to suffer too much from power if I can reliably standby out Pyrrha. Speaking of Pyrrha, I don't think she needs to be a 4 of. I think I'm going to reduce her count to 3. Maybe she can even go down to 2. But I think I'm going to start with 3 and see how that goes. I think I'm going to cut down a copy of... What is your name? I'm going to cut a copy of the Atom. So I'm going to run 3 Atom. Maybe even 2, honestly. We are still at 53, so wow, we want to run a lot of different cards, but we just don't have the space. I'm thinking I want to reduce the Brainstorm count to 1. I kind of still want to keep the tap self-salvage Brainstorms, try them out, see how they go. Let's see, if I run 4 runners, 2 Brainstormers, 4 James, 1 and 2, and 4. I think I'm going to... I don't think I have enough room to run the back row runner Ruby, unfortunately, with my current iteration. There is just... Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 14, 15. I have 17 zeros. 17 is a pretty comfortable number for me, so I do think I want to keep this amount of zeros. And I'll try to cut elsewhere. Plus, I know I do want to add in some other cards as well. Yeah, definitely don't need 4 of the Yang Encore. We are really only going to be looking to standby her out at level 1. When we get to level 2, we're going to be standbying out much more premium targets. Okay, let's see. We might want to consider cutting the refresh counter to 1 copy, since we are also running a heavy count of the anti-damage counter. We just might not have the room. Either that, or we want to consider cutting down the Maiden's counter. But I think for the sake of consistency in being able to see the event, since it is an event we kind of just have to hard draw into it, I'd rather see this at a high count than see the character counter, which I can grab through various means like brainstorming and the level 0 James. I want to see this at a lower count compared to the event. So I'm going to reduce that down to 1. So this is technically 50 cards, but I do know that there are some other cards I want to also run, which are pretty important. And those are some level 3 1-ofs. So looking at the deck right now, my level 3 Ruby combo, she really goes off if I have characters on the opponent's field in the front row. But the problem is my deck is going to get to really high levels of power, and it'll make it really easy for my opponent to just crash their board, and it'll be pretty hard for me to get targets to send to clock with the Ruby. Thankfully, this set added in a perfect solution to that in the level 3 Neopolitan. And I believe that card's a rare. Yep, this card. Level 3 Neopolitan. She has 2 effects. On play, I can pay 1 and salvage a climax, which is actually a really, really good effect for the Ruby combo, who only heals on play. So this solves our problem of not getting the climax combo when we need it. If we want to play Neopolitan, we can also just pay 1 extra and salvage the climax. But then her second effect is the main reason we want to play her alongside Ruby. On play, I can discard a remnant character, and then I can choose 2 of my opponent's characters in their waiting room, and then put it on separate open stages on my opponent's side. So I can, if they clear the board in the front row, I can play Neopolitan, and then just drag 2 of the characters from the waiting room onto the stage for Ruby to clock kick. So I'm going to add 1 copy. This card is really important for the deck, but I'm only going to play 1 copy, and then basically I'm going to be looking for it almost every game. Almost every game. I would say probably every game. In that case, I will probably want to... I think I might need to reconsider my James, because I only have 4 yellow. I'm not going to be able to hard play James unless I also level or clock one of these Yangs. Maybe that works, maybe that doesn't. But I think I want to try it for the time being. Remember guys, don't sweat over the fine details too much when you are just building your very first draft of a deck. the most important thing is just to get a list together and start playing. Nothing will beat experience in playtesting. So we have 51 cards right now. We want to reduce our count. I'm thinking I either want to cut the Pyrrha to 2 or I want to cut the Blake to 2. I think I would rather cut the Blake, being that I am okay with having multiple Pyrrhas on the board, because for every one of her in the front row, she is a big 1500 power boost. If I get multiples of her out, and then if I also have a James out, that is going to be almost an impossible board to deal with outside of wind triggers and anti-level counters and characters. While the Blake, this card I kind of just have to play from hand a lot of the time, or all the time. If I stand by her out, she really won't do anything. So I'm thinking I'm going to be looking for 1 or 2 copies of this in my hand, but then the more important thing is I want to be able to have this in my waiting room when I get to level 2, which means I ideally want to hold one in my hand, so I can clock it at level 1, so when I refresh, she can go back into the waiting room when I hit level 2. This looks pretty okay for to me in terms of just a preliminary build. I'm going to quickly scroll through the rest of the set and see if there's any glaring cards I'm missing. I might be, but I think testing will tell what kind of things I might be needing. The Li Ren really comes to mind as also a really good card. It's another card I really want to try out, but I think given my current deck, it might not be feasible to put him in. I think he would need to go in place of the Ruby Runner, which is honestly not too shabby of an idea. You know what, I'm going to cut the Ruby Runner and then I'm going to play a couple of Li Ren, because I think Li Ren is a really good card and he also mills, as well as being able to get me selective advantage, and as well as a Clock Bomb if I have another character. I think Clock Bombs right now are really, really good because, for example, it can remove things like opposing Pyrrhas, it can get rid of things that are on reverse or on death. Since the Li Ren is only 500 power, he is going to be able to be lower than most of the good targets he wants to kill, so I think this card's pretty good. I really want to play 3 of them, but I don't think I have the room. So I'll just stick with 2 of them for now. If I find him to be a really good card in testing, I think I'll bump him up. Or if he's not good enough, I'll cut him completely. Okay, back to looking through the rest of the set and seeing if we, just really quickly, seeing if we missed anything glaring. We don't run green in this deck, so we can basically ignore all the green cards that aren't level 0. There's honestly not too many green cards that are worth playing anyways in this set. Looking at yellow, there is this Yang, which is pretty nice, but I just don't think I have the room for this card. Sun Wukong's a decent card, but again, I don't think I want to play him. I really want to play this Neon Cat, honestly. But I would rather in this deck run the Ruby Runner, because it does mill. And then I'll use the Li Ren to deal with sticky targets that I can't otherwise deal with. The Pyrrha level 0 also acts as my discard outlet alongside the James, so I don't have any need of further discard outlets. This yellow event is also really cool. Being able to discard a remnant character to salvage a climax from my waiting room is really powerful, I think. So this is a card I really want to try as well. I think in this iteration, we don't really have room for it. I think if I were to try to run the card, I would probably cut copies of Maidens, and then I think the strategy of the deck would change a bit. But for this initial build, we're just going to stick with the Maidens event. We looked at green already, and let's check out red. So we have the Pyrrha, we have Nora Brainstormer, we don't run the Cinder combo, we run for Ruby. Selim, of course. I do want to run a copy of this card. This card is... honestly, I think if you play red and Ruby, you always include 1 or 2 copies of this card in your deck. Her second on-play effect is really, really powerful. So it's on play. I can either stock swap them, or I can mill their bottom 5 and then burn X equals the number of the climaxes. So normally stock swaps are almost an auto include in every deck anyways, just because if you don't run it, your opponent can run away with some really nasty stock compression. 8, 10, 12, 15 clean stock, and then you're not going to be able to deal damage ever again. The Salem Stock Swapper helps that, but she also has the secondary effect of being able to burn by milling your opponent's deck. So definitely a card we want to run. Level 2 Killer and Raven, but I don't think we have room for that. We are going for the more trigger as many standbys as possible kind of thinking, so we play Adam. The Zwei drop salvage. This card's also really good. Man, this card is really, really good, but I think the level 0 James the level 0 James and the Pyrrha and the Ruby kind of fulfill all of our needs for milling the deck, and as well as discard outlets, so I don't think Zwei has room in my current list. The Cinder Assist, we don't play the Amber level 0, so we don't play that card. The Ruby level 3 is an interesting card. Honestly, I think pretty highly of this card, but I don't think I have room for it. I think at level 3, I'm always just going to be trying to stick to the level 3 Ruby combo, and then a copy of Neopolitan in my hand, and then a copy of the what is your name? Of Salem. So not in this build, Ruby, but I do think she has potential in other builds. What is this card? Climax Swapper. Don't need it. Neopolitan grabs any climax we want, and then before that, we don't really have climax combos. We're just trying to trigger standby combos, or trigger standbys as much as possible. We have 4 of the James already. This is not relevant to our deck. A Beater, not relevant for our strategy. We already have Neo. Anti-level bomb. Could be worth it, but I don't think I have enough blue to warrant it. And I think I'll just eventually outpower my standby opponent when I get to level 2, when I standby out the level 3 Pyrrha. Hopefully. Alright, so that does it for the booster. I don't think I want to run any of the PRs either. It's 2k counter? Yeah, 2k counter. But yeah, like we mentioned, not going to run 2k count or level 1 counters. We're just going to let our things die if they get big enough, and then hand Encore. Alright, and I think that's it. I think all we need to do now is find a slot to cut, since we did add a copy of Neo and a copy of Salem. What do we cut here? Let's think. I think I'm always running for the 1/1 Encore. Everything else I really want to see at these quantities. Oh, Windows. It honestly might be another copy of Pyrrha, but I really want to start testing with 3 first. So at level 1 we have 2 things that we can standby out. We have the level 2 Yang, and then we have the level 2 John. Level 2 John. I think perhaps the better way to go would be to just let the Pyrrha try to fend for itself, maybe. But not running a back row support really feels rough. Maybe I don't run early play healers. You know, honestly, we could try that. We could try cutting the early play healers. I think we might be trying to do a bit too many things at once at level 1 and 2 in terms of standbying stuff out, and also hand fixing for healers. So, And at level 2, our way of paying out stock is probably just going to be by way of the pure climax combo anyways. Let's try playing without the healer, and then if we need it, we can always adjust the deck accordingly. So now that we cut those, we have one more slot, and I think just for the sake of consistency, I'll just add in another copy of the John, just to see how I like it. I really want to test this card out, even though I don't have that much yellow. I want to test this card out to see how well I like the whole Pyrrha and John combo. I think there's a very reasonable chance that I end up cutting the John for something else, but I at least want to give it a shot, and that's the most important thing, is, you know, trying things out for yourself and seeing what sticks, seeing what doesn't. And I think this list is good to go for our first try. All that's left is to... There are errors with the deck. Why are there errors with the deck? Please enter a deck name. Okay. RWBY 8 standby first draft. Character limit. Okay. 8 standby first draft. Creates. Alright. So that is our deck. So it's basically a predominantly red deck. We have a splash of blue for the level 3 Neopolitan. We only have a total of 6 blue, including her, but then since we only need her at level 3, just 4 of the James and 1 of the Spam Brainstorm will be more than enough to get blue by the time we are at level 3. We don't have a climax combo in this deck. We're just going to be trying to mill our deck as efficiently as soon as possible so we can get a decent refresh. Our level 1 standby target is going to be the 1/1 RWBY, and then our mill options are going to be the RWBY Runner as well as the Pyrrha level 0. At level 2, we want to... our level 2 standby target is going to be the 2/2 Yang, and then our level 3 standby target is going to be the Pyrrha, and copies of our Climax combo. We also run 3 of the Maintenance event. Since we are a standby deck, I expect us to win board, so we can... I think pretty reliably be able to use this card, ideally. And then we also want 1 free fish counter. And then 2 John supports to give my Pyrrha's hand encore, as well as just support my characters so they get even larger, so they are even harder to deal with. This looks good to me. Alright, so that does it for my end of the deck building segment. And then on our next video on the channel, you will see me and Randall duke it out with our created decks. Until next time, this has been Mike on Tressa's Collectibles, and wait until we have our next video. Ciao.